Let's say my company has a need, and they don't really know what that need is. They can't really completely frame it in absolute precise things, technical definitions, specifications, stuff like that. Which one of these tools and techniques might you be inclined to use to go out and let's understand some more information?
RFI.
Just the RFI, request for information. Okay, this might be a technique you would use if, I don't know what I need right now. In a way, I don't know what I don't know. And sometimes you can leverage your suppliers to help tell you, here's what we think you need, or here's what your competitors kind of do. Okay, so RFI would be a nice technique for that. You raise an interesting point. You as a company need to have credibility in the marketplace. And if you have a history of treating suppliers extremely well, being very open with them, being very fair, if you send out a request for information, they know you and they know you're serious, okay? And yes, again, it depends. It goes back to Porter's 5 forces, right? Maybe it goes back to who has the leverage in the market space. And if it is the buyer has the power, yeah, that RFI goes out and people will, yes, they will tell you some things. Now, what they might also send with that RFI, if it's extremely sensitive technical data, is what kind of document to go with it that they'll want you to sign. Non-disclosure agreement. Yep. So then it becomes an issue at that point. Do you want to play with them and sign non-disclosure agreements? Usually that's a pretty benign thing. I've signed hundreds of them over my career. The critical thing we have got to remember in a sourcing strategy scenario is that for most of the goods and services that you will ever buy, there's a pretty finite universe of players. Fair statement, suppliers, fairly finite universe. Do those suppliers have unlimited resources to give out to all their customers? No, they don't, okay? At Ford, when I worked there, we used to call our suppliers A teams, B teams, C teams. And unfortunately, when I worked there, back at that point in time, we didn't do a great job of supplier relationship management. Straight up, I'm on record on film, okay? Straight up, we did not. When we would go out and send out an RFI to our suppliers to say, hey, we would really like you to do the interior of the next generation Mustang, as an example, because of the way we managed our suppliers and our supply base, did we get their A team, B team, or C team? We got their C team. A lot of times, okay? And frankly, some of the tools and techniques we use here does send a signal, and I think that's something Scott will harp on. A reverse auction used to be extremely in vogue, correct? Yeah, well, reverse auction, as you will find out, or as you've possibly already heard, is an extreme supply base leveraging technique. It's pretty extreme, it's pretty dramatic, okay? And, it sends a signal, it sends a message. It sends a message. You got to be mindful of these things. What you're really trying to do with your suppliers, as corny as it sounds, is win their hearts and win their minds. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get their A teams. And it's a tough battle. And as Scott would say, the purchasing guy is at the forefront. That is their job to do that. Okay? What I thought was extremely cool about my job is what that would entail from time to time. It would entail me facilitating a meeting between our chief operating officer and a supplier president. That was pretty cool. I was sitting there in the room with people making 3, 4, 5 times what I was making, Pretty powerful, pretty influential people talking about business issues, business relationships, strategic partnerships, that type of stuff. Wow, that's awesome. But what I want to show you is to build on kind of what we talked about before. This was a pretty powerful tool. We'd used all of our tools. I brought a lot of those tools in, that 2x2 grid, the gemstone, all that crazy stuff. And we said, wow, this looks like a spend area we can leverage. We can leverage this. So that subsequently drove the strategy of saying, let's run a reverse auction. I think we can do this with these guys. There are lots of players that make these little speakers that can go into these handheld devices. So what I want to show you here, we should be familiar with what we're looking at, I hope. We set up what are called bid lots, and we'll kind of participate with that a little bit tomorrow.
Just like we did with
Just like you did with the laptops project setup. We had different volume levels. We were buying 1 million speakers of a certain type, 3 million speakers of another type, so on and so forth. We created some starting bid levels. We basically got the unit prices times 1 million, and that's how you created your starting levels. This event was only set up to go from 9 to 9:15, 15 minutes. We had some very wise coaching and counseling from Jason Trita, who is now, doing quite well there. And he said, make this tight, make this a really condensed event. This thing should kind of pop pretty fast. So we did that. And what I want to show you, we're going to kind of fast forward this thing so you can see kind of how it progressed. I think we had 5 or 6 suppliers that we invited to this event. How it progressed, and that concept of extended bidding. See if you can kind of follow along. So let me I'm going to just kind of scroll this forward. All right, we're getting close to 9:15. We're getting close. I mean, people are moving. I mean, we got some stuff going on. This particular bid lot, now I think at this point we actually went beyond 9:15. Somebody made that last second bid. It extended it. We're at 9:17 for the original bid lot. We had already saved 18%. At this point in time, I mean, there was, we weren't quite to popping the champagne, but people were literally cheering and getting unbelievably excited. I was like, wow, this is an amazing thing. Okay, so let's just stop here. I mean, we're almost to the end. This thing kind of wound down at maybe 1 hour and 17 minutes or so. So again, we're not on that first lot. We have now moved to the next lot of 3 million speakers, but wow, all in about 1 hour and 15 minutes. 41% savings over our baseline pricing, the price we paid yesterday for this stuff. On one lot, $210,000. I paid these guys $5,000 to do this. I mean, finance guys, the ROI, they did that calculation. It was such a monstrous number, they just gave up. So it was really dramatic, and it can still have that kind of impact, I think, in some organizations. There's still that possibility out there. Now, what does that tell you potentially in terms of the cost element there at Roche? What was being done prior to this? What kind of purchasing? Effective or arguably a little mediocre? Yeah, man, there was a lot of fat on the table, wasn't there? I mean, there was a lot of opportunity. So all we did was bring in a slightly advanced tool that was being played out in some of those best-in-class industries that I kind of got hired away from. And this is what happened. So needless to say, we met our performance objectives that year. Bonuses were very good. There was a very good personal outcome. My team did extremely well that year just doing these kind of things. It dramatically changed their role in the organization. They went from being transactional clerks to people that can actually we brought, I think in total, I want to say close to $500,000 to $750,000 of bottom line savings. And this was only one of about 20 commodity areas we were going to hit. This was only one of 20. So we had at it for the next 2 or 3 months. That vice president of manufacturing, she was okay with it after a while. She was a CPA prior to getting into manufacturing. She understood what was happening. So again, pretty impactful stuff. In strategic sourcing, all the heavy lifting is done in the early parts of the process. It's all in the strategy for the commodity and the design of your supply base and what kind of relationships you want to have with them. So we went through a process of trying to take a look at things at a commodity level that were very strategic. We dissected what was high volume, what was not high volume, what made sense for this type of approach, what didn't. We used a lot of those tools, the 2x2 grid, we used the gemstone, we used a lot of that stuff. We had many, many meetings with not only our purchasing teams, but other internal stakeholders, critical people that worked with us that needed to be a part of this process. So it's very situational. It is, it's very.